couple guest speakers to come in and talk about this. We have been talking about it the last few weeks, so I'll kind of bring you up to speed on the other pieces that that we have discussed in prior meetings if you wanted to go back and check those out. Now, for those of you that want to go back to some of the prior meetings, there is a YouTube channel now called the Digital Services Forum, and all of our meetings that we're actually going through now will be put up on that forum after we're done. So right now we have everything that we've done in 2022 or on the ServiceNow community. So if you want to go out there, you'll see we have a playlist, and that's where I'm putting all of our recordings instead of the Google Drive where they were before. Okay, and I will share that too when we go through the updates. Okay, so today we want to go through and before we start, we always go through this about the work group, and we're probably going to change this to start calling it a forum. So there'll be some changes, like I said, to the structure, but we have been meeting bi-weekly since 2018, and I always call it to discuss the service in ServiceNow. And it's really about that part that we talk about, and it's delivering these services and getting better at delivering these services is all part of digital transformation. So what we want to do here is really represent that digital transformation thought leadership as much as we can. And we do that by enabling all of our members. And a lot of it is just coming together and sharing what we've done to do digital transformations in our organizations, to deliver specific services, the model around delivering the services. We do have shared work, and the shared work right now is all out on our Google Drive. If you don't have a link to that, let me know or drop it in the chat. Somebody can put it out there, and we can get you a link to that Google Drive, as well as a shared instance. So we have this shared instance it's been around since 2018, and we've been upgrading it. But all of the demos and prior work, you can go in there and see some of the things that we set up. So there's some standard portfolios in there for state and local government and for higher education. So you can see the structures that we've created for some of the demos. Now, if you are going to demo in the work group, you don't have to necessarily be on that instance, right? But whenever you send me a recommendation for somebody to be added or yourself to be added, I'll give you admin on that instance. So we're all admins. We can all go in and do the same things on that shared instance. Okay, this group is hosted by our architecture team. So I'm an enterprise architect with ServiceNow, and our whole team hosts this event. So different people will be bringing in different topics at different times. And our executive sponsor, Jeff Lube, is the one who supports all the enterprise architects in the Americas, and he is our sponsor for this group. Okay, so that's basically the group started with 3 of us back in 2018. And right now we're a little bit over 550 members. So if it is your first time today, we always have a bunch of people coming on for the first time. If you can just drop your name in chat and tell us where you're from and what you do so that we can welcome you, that'd be great. And this is just kind of, there might be somebody that makes contacts. A lot of what happens here too, or people are making contacts amongst each other and having side meetings. It is more of a networking group as well. Even though we are meeting online, there's a lot that happens in chat during every meeting. So if you do want to drop your name in there, that'd be great. And then other members can see who you are, and maybe you have something in common that you can break out and collaborate on. I'm going to jump right into our topic for today. And Mark, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
All right. I'll just kick it off here a little bit and show you what we've been discussing over the last few meetings and give you some context for what we can talk about today. So over the last few meetings, we've been talking a lot, and this picture has come up a lot, and a couple of you, I think, have taken it and used it for conversations. And basically, there's 3 work streams in here, right? There's the DevOps work stream, which a lot of people are aspiring to. There's the work stream where you're supporting services, which is this one, incident problem change. And then the innovation work stream where you have, hey, I need something new. I need a new form, and I need to come down and get that form. And what's the process for delivering that form from the time it's an idea in someone's mind all the way to the point where it's live on a site somewhere and you can actually interact with that service. So it goes through all of the iterations on the idea to the funding request, and then it drops into some type of work stream that's happening to actually deliver that service again and again. Now, it could be anything in here, right? So when we talk about this model for delivering a service, there's a lot of things that affect it, right? One of the things that we talk about a lot is the size of the service. Is it a travel request where you have 20 fields and you have a manager that clicks on approve or not? Something simple like that? Or is it something really advanced? Like one of the things we work on at state and local is an unemployment request, where it can be weeks of validating the eligibility for that citizen and also making sure there's no fraud along the way. There's also the organization. People on this call, we have people that have organizations that are 500 people, and we have organizations that are upwards of 200,000 employees in an organization. There's a lot of things that affect this. How do we do this right? What we're really talking about in the operating model is a big part of it, it's not the only part, but who do we actually have to develop these things? So who do we need to deliver a service again and again? And then how do we standardize this? So a lot of times, even if you think of the service of delivering a service, right? A lot of times we see people doing this over and over and over again. Every time they have a new service, they create a new model for delivering that service. There's a lot of people that have been discussing this over the years. And one of the groups that we have internally, who is Mark is going to talk to us a little bit about today, because we had this conversation just to get us started on a click down on this. Right? So Mark is the product manager, senior product manager, and he works in our data foundations. So he's responsible in large for the common service data model. And we want to talk about the common service data model and where is it going and how is it, I know it's not the entire IT operating model, right? But it's a large part of that IT operating model. So we really want to talk about how that ties in as we model a service on ServiceNow. How can it support the operating model that we have? And then to give some thoughts around the different people that come into play. Like we've just been waving a hand at it, right? And doing these 9 roles that we have that probably some people need to fill on that innovation part. But what other parts are in there in that model? Okay, and then digital products are new things. So that is a big piece that we talked about in the operating model as well. And then we've been talking a lot about portfolios. And I was asking Mark on a call the other day, hey, we have digital service portfolios in our enterprise and DPM. Kind of where do the products fit in, right? Is that another portfolio? Is that the same portfolio? So those are some of the things we're chatting about. I just asked Mark to come in and kind of lead a conversation around this. And, we can, as usual, jump in if you want to. But Mark, I'll hand you the reins and you can kind of take it from there and give everybody share some of the wisdom that's been going on in the, I think the open group and as well as ServiceNow, right?
Yeah, that's right. So anybody that hasn't met me before, I'm Mark Bodman here in Austin, Texas. I participate quite a long time in the open group activities, Architecture Forum, RQMA, IT for IT, and I'm leading some of our cross forum activities at the open group as well, something called Open Digital Frameworks. So I could jump right in there, John, if you're ready.
Yeah, that's perfect, Mark. You gonna take share over?
I will take the share over, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the genesis of this digital product idea and where we're going from a common service data model perspective in the future, where it's kind of arriving at that same sort of juncture. So I think I could share. I'm trying to share now, but I just got to take over from you. And I'm going to jump around my deck a little bit, but I wanted to start with a few things because this is kind of a ground zero for where digital product as an idea came about. So just a little history on my own sort of tenure here. I've been here with ServiceNow for a little over 5 years. I used to manage the app portfolio management product here, which is largely at the left of this thing. And I like to think about this as what developers think about creating when you're developing code. You're developing an application, you're developing something to be deployed and then used by a customer. However, on the services portfolio side, you're dealing with ITIL and the use of digital technologies in some way. You're creating those services. And my colleague at the time, David Thigpen, and myself, we were in a room and we started to sketch out, well, what is it we're managing? What is it, what we're starting to bump into each other on this platform, because I'm dealing mostly with planning and development activities over here. This is majority of the work that I do, the features that APM is kind of implementing. But over here, it's mostly operational and use of technologies, or maybe if a problem or incident change is happening, how do you coordinate that? Well, as these worlds come together, especially if you think about DevOps, you have in the middle something called product. And there are certain elements that are in common. As we started to add more features to our respective product areas, there was more things in common, and app service is at the middle, which is just, a conjunction of the two, really. Think about it that way. But it's still a foreign concept for a lot of folks, because if they're dealing with a smart device in a hospital, for example, or you're dealing with manufacturing technologies, you don't think about those things as app services. App services tends to be some of the hardest things to communicate to my customer base. And depending on what kind of thing you're talking about, that name just may not resonate. But in the middle, so we kind of envisioned what happens when these two things get together. What are they in terms of a planning entity? And that's where we came up with this idea of digital product originally. And sometimes it's a device, sometimes it's a service, which is an engagement, it's an interaction, and there's an outcome that's produced. Sometimes it's an application that I use on a day-to-day basis. So we tend to muddy the waters between the different worlds and also different contexts. And so that's when digital product as a concept was born. I'm going to take you into the IT for IT world here for a moment, because over the last 4 years, we've been re-architecting the IT for IT framework around this concept. We've also been looking at it from an IT CSDM point of view, but I want to take you through the IT for IT stuff real quick, because you'll see sort of changes being reflected that we've documented in IT for IT. So the first thing that you'll see here is that we've you've got on the left-hand side is really this idea of a digital product instance. When you have an idea for a new digital product, you will basically get code, assets, infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, completely SaaS or a combination, and you pretty much code those or you deploy those, and they become what we call an instance of a digital product. You basically have a contract with your consumers of that digital product and different ways to interact with it. Either there's human interfaces, machine interfaces, or in the case of a factory, it could be a robot. The robot moves the piece from A to B to C. So the interaction basically is how you consume a digital product, and the system basically performs work to see an outcome, whether it's a service, a smart device, or a factory automation step. So this digital product is pretty loosely defined here, and there's a few other things that are kind of interesting, because these digital products rely on one another. There's a recursion that occurs. The folks that manage the infrastructure or the cloud resources provide those for you to create applications on them, and then you provide interfaces for other applications to maybe interface, or services to interface. So these are very recursive. There's a recursive aspect to this. And this is a very, I would say, different definition than what you see in the wild. But there's a few key things. One is system is the word that we're using in the IT for IT forum. We're also seeing contract, because that's where the price, the cost, and the SLA, OLA, the outcome that we promise whoever interacts with my digital product, that's where the promise is made. And this all kind of maps with CSDM today. This is the 4.0 model on the right. This kind of maps, when you think about digital products, we've introduced this idea of digital product models down here as a catch-all for different types of digital products that we will create, whether it's a smart device or software that runs somewhere, or a service that we will perform for somebody or something. We also have to incorporate this idea of the technical services and business services. These are both kinds of digital products. You just have internal consumers over here, and here you have external consumers, the business folks that are going to be relying on technology to perform an outcome. And last but not least is this notion of a business application, which is a pseudonym for digital products in many big organizations. They basically, I think historically, I see a lot of companies that take this business application and they copy it into their service table and they call it a day. Well, this isn't really intent, and it also business application doesn't work with a smart device. For example, if it's a cart that rolls around in the hospital. So we needed to kind of take a look at this IT for IT definition to say, okay, how does CSDM evolve to account for all these different use cases? How do we actually manage creating these? The next thing I want to show you is another thing that comes from the IT for IT forum that was documented as well. And this is looking at how do we look at the different types of digital products that we have in a large organization. So think about any of them can be a smart device, a service, an application that you're using. And we came up with originally 3 key portfolios. Whatever products are used by your customers, because the interaction with your customers are now digital. You're providing customers smart devices like smart cars or smart phones, things that are basically in their possession, or a combination of devices and services when it comes to, let's say, your telephone or cable service. Employee facing, this is also covered in the case of anything that's internal or external roles that people use, HR, finance, applications, and to some degree other tools that could be used to create digital products, but we've created a separate thing for that. Foundational technologies is shared. These are things, services that we would say are shared IT services. These are the things that everything else depends on or is built upon. And so think about a bill of materials. You want to use networking services, backup services, storage services in order to build something at a higher level that customers will eventually consume or employees do. And the last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about here is really the factory automation portion. The factory supports all of it, whether it's a shared foundational deliverable like cloud, requesting and getting a virtual appliance or cloud, or once that's acquired, then you're building something for employees or you're building something for customers to use. So there's a factory investment that's required. I talked to a customer recently and they said, you know what, we really didn't optimize this factory automation, this factory tool chain area, and we have recognized 250 different factories that have been built across our teams, and they're all different. Everybody chose a different set of automation, Puppet, Chef, different vendors, different steps along the way. And we need to really rationalize and automate the factory in a more sustained way, a more standard way, because some people skip certain steps in their factory automation when they're creating products for customers or employees. They'll skip, let's say, evaluating the data compliance. And if they added credit cards, now you're subject to PCI, and you want to be able to catch that before it gets in the hands of the customers and you violate your policies. So these are things that they need to also start to automate down here and rationalize as a portfolio.
Hey, Mark.
So, yes.
I got a couple of questions in here just on the difference that we get into this a lot with products and portfolios. And if I can explain it and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but or products and services rather. But the products are kind of what defines what you're building internally, right? With the team, and you're crossing apps and services together, and then the services are still what's being delivered to the consumers. Is that right, or do the consumers actually see products?
Sometimes it's a service, sometimes it's an actual product in the sense of the laptop that you have in your possession right now. That is a asset, that's a product that you basically get service on. So it depends on what I would say the primary deliverable. Is it an action, an interaction? That's a service. Or is it a device? That would be more like a product, a physical asset. But in either case, that's why we came up with a generic term called digital products, because at the end of the day, there's a service component to it. There's a warranty service on the physical device that you're providing over the life of that particular physical device. And then when it comes to, let's say, interacting with your finance department to change your credit limit on a credit card, for example, that is a service engagement. The product really is the credit card, to be honest, and it's the extension of the the credit limit. So depending on sort of the thing you're talking about, we want to be specific, right? Because when we change our terminology along the life cycle, that's where it becomes really muddy, and that's what we want to stop.
Did that answer the question for whoever put that on chat?
No.
Go ahead
We can
and
take
ask
this
it.
offline, but do I have a minute to ask my question, or we can take it offline?
Sure. Ask
So
your question.
So my question that I have is, products, we have been doing product management for a long time, but you have the concept of service offering where you have the contract defined as it is now before the product is right. Then you have the application service that is a composition of the CIs, all right? So that's there. Then you also have the business capability and business application concepts. So what I'm trying to understand is the product, is that just an abstract concept, or is that going to replace? So for example, if I have to put my SLAs, am I putting my SLA in a product somewhere else or at TSO level? So is it replacing, or are we adding another layer of abstraction on top?
Yeah, so let's talk about that here. So currently, when we're talking about the elements you're managing, you're talking about business applications, things like business services or technical services. So today, the worlds between development, okay, and operations are quite separated. Now, what's bringing it together are agile capabilities, agile principles, where the team delivers the product. And they actually they adopted the name well before we did, right? So they already say we deliver products, period, right?
Yes.
And then we kind of rename it as services over here, or we kind of fit it into this business application from a historical perspective. The problem is we may sometimes refer to the same thing. The business service is the application, all right? But sometimes it's not. It's a smart device. And that's where the current methodology, the current terminology, because we don't say products anywhere, it's all ancillary down here. It's a product is really down here. We don't have a product-centric operating model within most cases, right? And the DevOps teams, they're operating in a product-centric way, but these guys don't yet, right? The design stage, they don't call things products over here at all. And then over here, we don't call things products over here at all. But what is the deliverable? At the end of the day, the team that is putting something out there is assembling many different products down here to run as a system. So think about this as your system, which basically incorporates all of this underlying code, and may have rely on other systems, right? Might rely on other digital products to run. So in a sense, we've looked at this sort of picture and said, you know what's missing? What can we really envision to jump to a product-centric model and then bring sort of this idea into the main stage, right? So that's kind of the thinking at 4.0 and why product models have been added. But now let's go to the next step. Okay, so and to answer your question, am I replacing everything? Not necessarily, but in some cases where you already copy your applications into your business table, you're doing it already. You're already kind of saying this equals this. But when you have something very separate, that's where it becomes confusing. Your consumer knows the applications they're using, but when they look at the service, they're not sure which service to provide to choose, for example. And that becomes a bit confusing. Or if it's a device, there's nothing.
So here's my comment there. I like the idea of product because in an agile world, we have been doing product management for a long time. So is that going to be comparable to a business service? Because it has to be.
This is where we have the opportunity to kind of reinvent ourselves given this product-centric world. Okay. And you're leading into the last portion we want to talk about.
Okay. All right.
So what I'm going to. No, you're right there. So how do we, envision that next step? So what I'm going to share with you next is not published. It's not going to be published for a minimum of a year, but this is what we're looking at right now. This is kind of on our drawing board. It's called the Now Data Model, and it's in draft. And the idea here is, what if we did kind of put digital product in for business app, for business service, and down here technical services. Okay, so no matter what I'm sort of reporting and managing as a portfolio, what does that look like? Even the portfolios, we have a separate business application portfolio, separate project portfolio, separate service portfolio. What if we collapse that into one portfolio concept, like I just showed you, the four that we have?
And that was my second question. Yeah.
Yes. And then down here at the right, you'll see the digital product models can be an application, a service, a pure interaction, or a smart device. Software, I question a little bit because software as a deliverable is maybe just a down here. It's not really a product that runs to deliver an outcome. But the offering is still valid. You still have to know the SLA, and you still have to know who your consumers are. And then we've added this notion of understanding your end customer. So what is it that you sold them? What do they have entitlements to? Did you sell them a device that's in their house or in their possession? So we needed to be able to understand this context as well as just internal consumers, which are usually here.
So basically what you've done is you've gotten rid of business application, business service concept, and you merged both of them together and created the digital product, which can be supported through the design, build, manage lifecycle and consume lifecycle.
That's right, and it really matters what is it you're consuming, right? Is it a hardware thing, a software thing, or a combination of the two?
That's right.
Or I'm just interacting directly with an interface of some sort. So the idea here is that let's not muddy the waters any further with the old terminology. And what if we just adopted this digital product concept to say, what does the world look like? And this is sort of our next stab at it, you know? And then you can see that we're also looking at different things like how the system is now, instead of application service, what if we did go with a system concept here? The system is decomposed into hardware and software, but it's also systems rely on other systems. This is a simpler, systems design is a thing. This is something real that we can actually get our heads around.
See, one thing that I liked about the legacy, the services, was that you, for the first time, had very clear-cut responsible ownership. Now, by doing digital product, again, you're muddying up because who is the owner of the digital product? Is that
well, they sit in the middle. They sit in the middle still, and that's the idea. Is that the service owner and app owner are maybe the same person. Matter of fact, I don't know if you guys saw digital portfolio management as a product, but digital portfolio management brings together the app portfolio and the service portfolios in one user experience. So if you are the owner of both the application and the service, you now have one place to go to see everything related to it. You don't have to jump around and into something called APM down here and something called SPM down there. So we are moving in this direction to bring these two worlds together. What we haven't done is made the leap into calling things products yet, but that's really the next big phase here, is to get into a product-centric world. We need to call things products. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Mark. As I go through this, the immediate first snag that I got caught into was, what about businesses that do not have a sold product that is installed or that is mailed out or wherever? It's purely a service based.
That's fine. Then everything you provide is a service type digital product. Then, and no big deal.
But what if it's not a digital product as such? For example, healthcare. I see that healthcare is in the background there. There's nothing digital that you're providing. You're providing actual services to the customer on their, let's say, on their body.
That's right. That's right. So but they interact using digital products that you're managing. So somebody created, let's say, a scheduling app for getting your appointment, and your customer has to interact. They have to be entered into the system, otherwise you can't schedule an appointment.
True.
Right.
Yeah. So this is Louis. I work at Baptist Health, and in our business applications, we currently have about 937 business apps built there who have services underneath, but it's mainly the business applications that we use to deliver healthcare services to our customers.
Yeah. And of course, those customers may not see all of them. They're kind of behind the scenes in some cases, right? So they're behind the scenes systems that sit in front of the system that the customer does use. And of course, whatever you sell them is a service. You're selling them an appointment, you're going to charge them. So all these back-end systems need to exist in order for that interaction to happen properly. And more, it's all done not on paper, it's all done electronically.
Would it really help the model if some of these, for example, sold product install base maybe we just color code them somewhat slightly different to say these depend on the environment that you're working in. So because they don't apply to you in the case of, for example, let's say healthcare, right? They're enabling,
yeah,
but
but
nothing installed. There's nothing.
The funny thing is on the healthcare one, they're the ones that drove probably this product centric more than others, because they have these machines they wheel around the hospital, and then depending on where the machine is, right, somebody in the business will report an issue with that machine because they're mobile and they have to know where they are at any given time. So they pushed it more in the hardware side versus service. The service stuff is pretty well understood. I think it's the stuff like hardware, that rolls around and it has to be accounted for. That becomes a little bit sticky because now you don't really have a business app that matches it. You have apps installed on it and on the back end of the cart that it needs to communicate with in this data center. But it's complicated. This is a bit messy.
It's complicated,
Yeah, but
especially that says sell and consume. They don't really consume, and you don't sell to them your cart, right?
Nope.
You leverage that.
That's all right there.
Okay.
yeah, and that's the point, right? So this is Lou from San Diego. For a long time, as long back as I can remember, years and years, the software model, the hardware model, facility models, all these models existed, and they had a capability to publish a catalog item from the model. And you're supposed to follow the rules and publish all your catalog items from a model. And then in Quebec, I think, the service model came out, but the service model did not come out with the ability to publish a catalog item from the model. So when you have out there a product/service, you could just be selling a laptop, or perhaps that laptop comes with access. So you combine that and you have to make a decision. Is that going to be a hardware model or is that going to be a service model, right?
Yes, it's a combination. Most of the cases, it's a combination. And that's why the system becomes a little easier to understand, because this system could be a combination of hardware and software that's now in the possession of a customer or a business person or rolling around a hospital. That term still works. And the intent of that system is to understand not only what it's decomposed of, because that's what we really built these on to understand, is the layers that decompose it into the underlying infrastructure. But then they have dependencies on other systems, which is also very difficult to manage and articulate in this world generally. So we want to be able to do that better.
Yeah, right. But the point is that if you stick with how ServiceNow designed this many years ago, publishing your catalog requests from models, the models then have the product owners associated with them. And that also ties into APM, where you associate your models and your products to get the life cycle. So it all rolls up and ties in. But the key is not creating catalog items without their underlying models, whether it's a service model, or whether it's a hardware model, or whether it's a software model. I think doing that keeps it very straight.
That's right. That's exactly it. And we're taking those, and they can be bundles, but the bundles have to work together, right? It's not like a bill of materials where you just order all this stuff. It has to be configured. It's got to be built by a team that understands the requirements, right, of that product and the combination of those underlying products. And so going here, you get more of a product design acumen and a PLM sort of acumen versus what IT does, which is we lose track of that altogether. Other than SAM and HAM, which are pretty much understanding the life cycle of stuff that you actually buy from vendors, we really don't manage the life cycle of how we assemble that and how we consume it internally very well. And that's what we want to get back to.
Yeah, I just hope you don't change the application service table again when you change the system.
Well, yeah, the practicality and how we roll this out is to start leveraging the product model tables more explicitly and referring to things in that basically that we are defining here as products. Now, when it comes to digital products and not just vendor products, that's where we're starting to unwind some of this stuff that's happening within SAM and HAM, because their software and hardware asset management have capitalized on the product model concept. They're the ones that have used this most because that's where you spend real money with real, products from your vendors or services, hardware, software, doesn't matter. But when it comes to the things that you define internally, that's where product has escaped us and we want to bring it back.
I'm just saying, a lot of work went into migrating from the service classification, application service, business service, technical service to the new tables.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
to change them again.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily changing them, it's evolving what we have now with a wrapper to define the product that we're talking about. So this is going to be an incremental thing. Like I said, this isn't going to see the light of day for at least a year or two, but the ideas are starting to unveil themselves in products such as digital portfolio management. And you're starting to see signs of how we're moving in this direction. Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, it'll take a couple generations to actually move it to this simpler model. But the thinking is there. I just wanted to share this because if you could see the thinking behind it, some things that you're seeing along the way will make more sense. Matter of fact, we changed the lifecycle definitions recently in order to manage the full lifecycle across all of these elements more intelligently, because previously everybody had a different notion of where the lifecycle was, whether you're up here talking about a business app or services. Services didn't really even have a lifecycle established, or a system or a component of a system down here yet again. So assets were separately managed from CIs. So we're collapsing sort of the functionality, and the data model is kind of helping to drive some of that. But the functionality that comes on is going to be more mature to be able to facilitate it. The one thing I also wanted to ask and maybe see, has anybody started using Service Builder where you define the service and the offering and then connect it to the app service?
Yes.
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 So those are.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's some open cases on that because there's some inconsistencies, I think, between Service Builder and the native UI on the back end. Like, for example, the business field is 4,000 characters, and on the native UI, it's 40 characters. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
more tuning, I guess.
More tuning, but I think it just came out in Rome. So it's pretty new, and I think the customer feedback has just started to roll in on that to improve it, right? So it's really a step in the right direction to get the folks that do own the service component to be able to define the offering as part of the service. Now imagine if that were a digital product and that was sort of also used in the context of an app. So it would be easier to define all these things in one spot and then just declare what kind of product is it. Does it contain hardware, software, or both? So we could streamline the creation and also explicitly define the offering, which has the SLA, OLA, and starts to enter into the costing aspect, right? And also even how it's tied to the catalog items. How is this consumed?
Yeah, Mark, the service build is good. It's consistent with the low code, no code, user friendly, drag and drop, experience,
Yes.
consistent with workspaces. The features, functions, capabilities, because it is sort of that different environment, is not as rich as the native UI forms, but I'm sure that'll happen over time.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a step in that direction to streamline the creation of these things. But yeah, I would say there's a bit of a back and forth between the data model thinking and of course how the products are evolving. And right now, the customer install base and sold product, that's only available in CSM, our CSM module. To make that more common across everything, we're looking at bringing that in as well.
Hey, Mark, I have another question. The Sufyan.
Sure.
So when you had the technical service, on the left-hand side in 4.0, and which was slightly confusing because they were basically a capable or technical function like a team, Windows, you can say Windows or a collaboration or something like that. And then you had offering, you could say a laptop, desktop, and whatever it may be. Digital product. Now that's not going to be parallel to a function anymore, or is that supposed to be parallel to a function?
Well, it still works in the context of a technical service, and let me go to a 4.0 model to have this conversation a little easier. So the folks that manage the infrastructure, they provide infrastructure that is sort of acquired through a catalog. So if I own,
Yes.
if I basically provide, I don't know, Wintel or Linux,
Yes.
images,
Yes.
that works fine. How that basically, yep, they have to think about what they provide in the full life cycle, because here's what's the cost of that technical services, the support group, the offering SLA OLA, and what it pertains to within the CMDB as those things are instantiated. That has to be managed well, and we're starting to automate some pieces of this.
Sure.
So once you define, let's say, the support group or managed by group here, we propagate that information into all CI. So let's say there's 30,000 servers in the data center. We can associate those 30,000 servers to the support group for each individual one. So we're starting to automate and use this model in more sophisticated ways. And they do need to think about their product, because eventually these products, let's say the server hardware, maybe there's physical hardware, will stop being supported by your vendor. So the cost, the ability to update it, the need to fund those upgrades needs to exist. And the problem that I've seen in most large organizations, it's not part of the design. It's not part of where the investments happen. At a corporate level, these guys are kicking and screaming for investments that's kind of below the line or not seen in a different portfolio. Keep the lights on portfolio.
Sure.
And that's where that first image kind of comes in, where we start managing as part of the whole. Each digital product plays a part. This stuff is really foundational. Which is why we're calling it foundational now in the IT for IT side, because that really dictates where it is in the stack.
I'm still processing. I'm sorry.
Understood. It is a few jumps beyond what we have today, but it is helping to bring a product mindset to all the owners of these services and/or applications. We had, and where does the service owner make sure that there's funding in the next year to upgrade all their services or to migrate off of COBOL technologies onto something else, right?
So basically,
it affects their staffing.
Instead of a business application, you have a digital product, which can be a collection of other digital products created by the technical services or a business services, right? Because basically, you've renamed all of them as digital products. So there is no more that easy segregation between a business service is a consumption-driven capability. Technical service is a build capability or manage capability, and business application is at a higher level. So now you're almost like you've overloaded that term, and depending on the context, the digital product can be something that's in the managed technical services or in the consumption.
Yes. That's right. And this is where it's quite interesting. A lot of companies that I'm talking to, they'll take their employee facing stuff and then open it up to customers, or take a foundation. AWS was a huge bet that AWS made, right? Amazon made, and now it's a product they sell to consumers. So understanding the outcome, when you invest here, this means that there's income, but down here, okay, when you invest, what you're doing is you're investing in the ability to produce new digital products more quickly, more reliably. Of course, the outcome for employee-facing stuff is classic IT, making your employee life easier. But foundational, how much foundational do you want to own? Do you want to own a data center or outsource it? So each one of these portfolios has a different investment planning process and a different outcome depending on how you invest. So this needs to be understood, because the lack of understanding and the changing of our terminology across the life cycle confuses this picture quite a bit. What we really want to know is strategy and outcome, customer outcome, internal roles, or manufacturing, right? That's what's really important to understand, and this allows us to get there. Make sense?
Yes, I'm just trying to think how are we going to clarify because the digital product concept is getting overloaded across the design, build, manage, and consume context now. And they all, well, depending on which context you are in, it will mean something different.
Yes, and the good thing is that we have teams, and if you're keeping up on things, there's something called team topologies that is helping to understand how the products teams are being staffed. And then each team has a position. Some positions are going to be architects, some positions are going to be the product managers, some are going to be support. But the idea of team topologies, and there's another mechanism called Helix organizations, where you can mix a central team and a federated team to manage these digital products. But first, we need to know what we're working on. Now, once we understand what we're working on and where you are in these 4 portfolios, then the team knows what they are, what sport they're in. Using a sports analogy, they know what game they're playing. They know the sport. They know the outcome that happens when they win or they lose.
And so I see somebody just attached a video to watch, because the question I asked is the application service maps, will they be system maps now?
System mapped. Well, that's the idea, but we have a long legacy of naming an app service up until now. I've been lobbying to change that name for 2 years now, but you know, there's a lot of legacy that we've already mired in. It's hard to change something like that, you know, when you have so many years and a huge investment. But
is your vision still to have the mapping at a system level?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. In a matter of fact, I want to show something. We do change the definitions in CSDM slightly over time. And I want to just point something out that's very subtle, but it's important. This is the application service is a logical representation of a deployed system or app stack.
Yes.
So we're starting to incorporate this language in the definition themselves, so we have a better clarity of what we mean by these things.
Makes sense. No, it's important to just understand your thought, you know, how you're thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of little things, but they all are leading somewhere. And even the SDLC component, what we're finding is the infrastructure stuff is all in the cloud, right? You don't really own any of that. But the folks that are building things, they're just pushing a config file out there to create a new app service that's deployed in the cloud. So more and more of what we consider configuration management activities and concerns needs to be integrated with that team and in the CI/CD pipeline.
Yes.
Yes.
So now a slightly unrelated question now. We are also doing BCM at BJC. And so what happens to the business impact analysis and business continuity plan? Those concepts, they were hanging off business application. Now we replace business application with a digital product.
They don't change immensely. What does happen is a problem that you can easily see. Right now we have a business continuity here, BC, okay, which you in the design stage, you're basically articulating what it is. You know, the architects are figuring out what's the importance of a capability, and then you build something, right? You basically design, this team gets certain hardware and software, they deploy it, they make it all work hunky-dory. Well, what happens today is you have a separate business service portfolio out here, which maybe there's a set of business consumers that aligns to that capability. Well, what if a different set of consumers started to consume this? Yep. How do you account for that easily? And because we have a different thing managed here versus up here, the business impact could be different based on current consumption or use, right? You didn't design it for a certain thing, but now people are using it for something that you did not intend.
Oh, so now question. Can you go to the Now model, please?
Sure. The new one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Now model. Okay, the Now data model. Hold on a minute. Yes. Okay.
So I don't see it yet.
Is it
now,
up?
Is the BIA and BCP connected, related to the consume digital product or the design digital product? Because they can be both, because you just said,
in this model, it's synonymous. There isn't a difference, because the digital product that you define here for design purposes is still carried through the rest of the area. So it's the same one.
But if two different teams are using the same system, won't they have two digital product because their usage may be different?
Their usage may be different, but it's still defined in one spot from a criticality perspective. The difference is who are the consumers, right? If somebody else starts to consume this under one premise versus another premise,
but you
have traceability.
But see, you just made a comment that maybe two different teams, if they use it, their RTO, RPOs can be different. How would you capture that?
Right.
Where will
well, the idea here is you'd have to build another offering. So whoever's the product manager of the service or digital product can change the offering. It's not a problem when your system is engineered for, it's the lowest common denominator that goes, right? The system could be engineered for low availability, and all of a sudden somebody in the business expects high availability. This offering is your contract with them, and if they go through the catalog, that will be known. But the problem is the guys up here that design it, right, because of this big separation between the development side of the world and the service side of the world, that can easily get lost. Right?
So will they have to support a different business offering? Will we have a new digital product with the new BIA?
Well, there's two things that can happen. One is you now have an over-engineered system. You can have high availability and your business consumers don't care anymore. Right. I don't come in on the weekends anymore. Now you're spending more than necessary here.
Yes.
And because you have that visibility, you're talking about the same digital product. You can say, okay, folks, architects, build team, let's deallocate hardware because we really don't need it 24/7. The opposite is true as well, where somebody starts consuming it at a higher criticality than is expected. Yes. But the nice thing is that digital product connection to business capability, and here, this becomes simpler because right now this is the consumption. This is all about consumption, which now ties to what you originally designed for. That's like the provider.
Because I'm still trying to think about when we do a business impact analysis here now, yes. Are we at a digital product in the design level or at a business offering digital product level?
Well, think about, because right now you have two different worlds to concern yourself. What's the service say? Yes. What does the business application say? And they're different stories. They're very different. And connecting the dots today is elaborate. You have to go all the way over here to connect the dots today. Yes. That is very elaborate and unnecessary in this model.
Sure. Thank you.
So I know we kind of went down some rabbit holes on the conversation, but I think it will help make some of the points clear on why this will be better long term. Getting here is going to take a while, but we're thinking about it. We're throwing things on the wall and saying, will this work? And how does it work? And how can we change what we do today to support this vision, right? This simpler model that brings these the dev concepts and the operations concepts better, more closely aligned with each other.
So the model really supports the DevOps, the DevOps direction. And then underneath it too, with the open group, what other parts of the whole IT operating model are they talking about? So I know there's the organization part, like the Helix organization you mentioned earlier. And then there's, you were describing to me the other day, the parts. So it's the financial part, right? The funding part for it all.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, the work group that I'm leading at the open group right now is looking at a couple of very interesting problems regarding what I just walked through. Okay. Probably the most interesting one is how do we apply our enterprise architecture to the products that we sell? And so let me go back to this thing. Enterprise architects a lot of times are there or basically looking at stuff internally. You have product architects up here, but because of the reliance on IT, okay, because software and systems, all these things are more integrated, and the customer systems are now connected to employee systems and using shared foundational technologies. The drive is to get enterprise architects into that market-facing space to be able to better design products used by customers or partners, right? That's one thing. Also down here, the conversations I'm having with enterprise architects are, why do we have such a huge redundancy in factory components? Why does each product team have to actually design their own factory from scratch? Why don't we have a standard factory so that everybody up above can go faster? We can, onboard a new foundational technology more quickly with a factory built for that. Same thing with stuff for customers. Now that we can deliver things automatically to customers, what else can we deliver using the same factory? And the factory isn't just the factory to build it, but it's the do GRC activities, right? It's to do the governance aspects of it too. And then also profitability, how much money are we making? What's the liability? Who are those customers? So that kind of drives some of your investment decisions, even on the foundational side, because like GDPR, you can't have data cross certain boundaries in the world. So these are all aspects of how your foundational technologies needs to support where your customers are growing. So that's the activity I'm leading at the Open Group right now, is to say, how do EAs, get more involved in these digital products that are used by customers and in the factory. This is where also you're seeing things like IT for IT is really the automation. It's an abstract model for the factory itself. So that's where we're supporting that.
The repeatable delivery for that.
Yeah, how do we automate the delivery of any of those types of digital products, and what are they? It's the same problem, because when you're in the factory and you're changing one digital product, you need to know the impact to the others, right? So
yep.
As you're changing these, and these are changing, impacting customers. And here's what's really interesting. Last thought: every digital product that you deliver to a customer has to be supported for as long as it's used. And the use case I use is the oven. I just bought a digital oven from Whirlpool a few years ago when I built my house, and I still get factory updates when they update my software in the digital oven. I've had it 4 years. I expect to have it 20 plus years, right? I don't replace my oven as fast as I replace my phone. And everybody that makes digital products now has to support them as long as those products are out there.
Very cool. A lot to think about. That definitely gives us some thinking. We're, I think, going real general on that delivery model. So definitely want to dig in more on the Open Group delivery model. Also finding a lot of these standards groups in government, where all the governments have it too. I'm looking at the Canadian government right now. They have this whole team about how do we deliver services, and they're starting to discuss products too. So it's interesting, all the different think tanks that are around the same problem.
Okay, well, I see it. The DoD has been asking questions here in the U.S. There's just quite a few questions about how do we evolve. Gartner published a piece on customers agonizing over the definition of product in IT. So I think part of this provides an answer. Is it perfect? No, but it's a huge step in that direction that seems to work if you get your head around the abstract.
Yeah, very cool. Mark, thanks so much. Lou, I know we're going to have you share some of your results today, but we'll pick that up next meeting, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Mark, thanks. This was really helpful for me anyway.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.